Okay, guys, welcome back to part two of the APA Classic Power Rankings. In this video, we'll be doing teams 16 through to 9. And joining me today is Owen. If you want to say hi.
What's up, guys?
Okay, let's waste no time and get straight into Orphan and his Portland Zydogs as the first team that I've got ranked 16, and you've got ranked 21. So I might let you start off with this, and I'll try and find the redeeming qualities that put this 5 ranks higher for me.
Yeah. So the team definitely isn't like horrible. It has some redeeming qualities. I think the hazard control is very nice. Having two pretty reliable defoggers in what do you call it, the Rotom and the Togetic. They don't like necessarily taking the rocks, but they definitely can get off a pretty reliable defog at least once. And then Magic Bounce and Espeon, which is pretty nice. The speed tiers are pretty nice too as well. Having some pretty decently fast stuff in this Magius, Sneasel, Espeon, stuff like that. But where this team falls short for me is two specific type things. One, it doesn't have a ground type. And I honestly, I'm a firm believer that every league team should have, at least some semblance of a ground type, unless you just want to be pivoted and volt switched on just endlessly and get put in the cycle and not really have much to do to stop it. Which definitely isn't, great when you have, more frailer offensive threats and stuff like that. Especially with Rotom is going to be, the main switch in for stuff like that, and you don't want it to be super chip with that plus rocks if it's your removal. And then the water type being Frogadier doesn't really count as a water type in all honesty, because I mean it's going to be using protein, and it's definitely not a switch in for anything. So that does make switching in on those those types of the water types would check really, really tough on the team and stuff like that. Puts a lot of pressure on the other mons. And then the third thing I didn't really like about this team at all is that it struggles majorly with breaking opposing bulky waters. All the team really has for it is, I guess, Rotom. But Rotom obviously doesn't want to switch in. And it's not OHKOing most, fat waters. And, is probably getting hit pretty hard in return. And then Tangela doesn't do a great job of breaking, especially if you can just throw a Toxic on it or something like that. It makes that a lot harder. And then that's the kind of the type that you want to break the most for mons like Stakataka and Sneasel and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, it's just kind of where the team falls flat for me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I will say that I do love his first 4 picks. I think everyone knows how threatening Stack Attacker can be, especially in low tiers. Like, you set up a Trick Room with the Z move, and once you get to +1, it's like, well, there's like 4 things in the tier that want to switch into this thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And Togetic and Tangela are actually 2 mons that I've used in regular tiered drafts, and they do a fine job of being walls and fat mons to soak up and like throw wishes, heal bells, toxics, leech seeds as it is. And so when you take away those top 2.5 tiers, I feel like these mons are going to be incredibly difficult to break when you add Rotom in there, who's catching wishes from Togetic. So that's, and then I feel like looking at the layout, you've got these top 4 mons that are all really difficult to break, even Stack Attacker to an extent, with its like ridiculous physical defense. And then you've got what he's attempted to have as breakers down the bottom for his Stack Attacker. Sneasel, I think, is great. Espeon provides more hazard support that really does help his team out. Frogadier, I don't like that either. Miss Magius, I think, is really quite nice. With a good speed tier, and we've already seen that some teams in the last video were very slow. So I think like a lot of times a timid Miss Magius can come in, set up a nasty plot, and just win. And then Toxicroak was a mon that I absolutely hated until Johnny wouldn't shut up about it for about a month while he was using it in NCP, I think it was. And I think that the team actually functions sort of well around either letting Stack Attacker or Miss Magius and Toxicroak come in and win late game.
I will say that I did kind of discount Toxicroak having dry skin is also really nice for it, because it does give him, semblance of a Scald switch in, potentially using those as set up water and stuff like that, which is really cool. Having that water immunity is definitely great for this team. That's for sure.
That is for sure. And I mean, as you said, the speed tiers are very nice, like Espeon, Sneasel, Miss Magius, all very fast mons. Frogadier, not the fastest, but it doesn't mind being scarfed. Can be a scarf U-turn. Nice pivot. And then you've got the flip side, you've got Stack Attacker, which once it sets up a trick room, I don't think anything underspeeds it, because it's got base like 4 speed or something stupid. And then you've got, admittedly, only one rocker in Stack Attacker. That's a bit of a detriment.
Yeah, because it kind of forces him into that role if he wants to have that that aspect to the game, which is tough because you want to run Trick Room, you want to run Gyro, you want to run Stone Edge, Earthquake for the steals, stuff like that. So it gives his stack a like major forming saw syndrome.
Yeah. The T-Spikes, I mean, that was alright. But yeah, that's all we need to say about that team, I think. We moved on to Ultra, and he's Philly Soldu, and we had this one ranked about the same. I had it at 15, you had it at 16. And looking at this team, Ultra's gone a bit of a different way to most coaches. He saved a lot of points for his last few picks. He started getting some budget stuff nice and early. That Breloom pick, I think, can be really solid. Breloom hits like a truck. And in low tiers, speed tiers are a bit of an issue, so it's like cripplingly poor speed isn't as big a threat. He has 3 rockers, 1 nice defogger, 1 unmon that can defog. And he covers a lot of types, I think, which he also has 3 wish passes. And if anyone knows anything about how I like to review teams, like this ticks a lot of boxes there. Especially with Licky Licky, because that thing, a lot of people will prep for like a Wish Protect Heal Bell, like Body Slam set or Dragon Tail, when in reality you can run like Swords Dance and just destroy something.
So, oh yeah. I definitely actually like a lot of things about this team. It's just a couple things held back for me. Like you said, Breloom is terrifying, not in just low tier, just in regular. It might be, a little bit slower, but just those Technician mock punches and stuff like that are terrifying. It can be a pretty valuable Scarfer as well if you really need it to be. I've run Scarf Breloom a bunch of times before, and I really, really like it paired with Mesprit because, those dark types, those steel types, stuff like that Mesprit doesn't really touch too well. Breloom just absolutely destroys, and especially with how limited they are, I think Mesprit's going to be actually a really, really solid Pokemon. In this format, I think Mesprit's pretty scary with how diverse it is and how much, how wide its move pool is and stuff like that. One downside of this team, I said it, when we're talking about Orphan's team, Ultra does have a ground. I don't like the ground being Diglett though. I like the Diglett pick. I think it's a really good value pick, just to catch some teams off guard, potentially trap some stuff, or things like the Mesprit or Mons like that. But having it doesn't fulfill that defensive role that you really need a ground to do. Soak up hits and stuff like that, pivot in on volt switches and electric types and stuff like that. That is, a bit lacking. Yeah. And honestly, other than the only other real big hindrance I think is on this team is he only has 1 real defogger. I mean, Lumineon gets defog. I don't know how viable it's going to be. I guess in low tier, it could be a little bit better, but I don't think it's, a great Pokemon. Golbat is a phenomenal defogger. I love using it in standard even. It's super, super fat. The thing just absolutely eats hits. It can, roost off super effective damage. Like, it's absolutely nothing. But forcing that thing to come every week when it doesn't necessarily have the matchup every week is going to be rough to, keep spikes and, rocks and stuff like that off the field, which is unfortunate. But other than that, I think the team's, pretty solid. It's right in the middle of the pack for me. And this isn't really based on, play, because obviously Ultra's, super, super talented. But, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. One other thing I do love about this team is Jolteon outruns the entire tier with its Flame Orb set. I think.
Oh yeah, it gave him some much needed speed too. Other than that, his fastest one was Liepard. So I think the Jolteon pick was great.
Oh yeah, and it's I think there's one real mon that outspeeds it in low tiers and a Selgor, and if you're running a Scarf or Selgor, then you have so many switch-ins to that, it's ridiculous. So
if you have a Golbat, you have a lot of switch-ins too.
Yeah,
Selgor as well.
I do like Golbat. I've actually drafted Golbat in Indigo this season, which has Ubers in the tier, and it's looking at matchups. It's actually going to come to a fair few games. And so I can
it's people sleep on its bulk, man. That thing is so fat. I've had it actually win me a couple games before. Just
because you can just
banging things and poisoning things. Oh yeah, it's great.
And I will say that forcing it into defog does hinder it a little, because if you can run a Golbat that doesn't need defog, then you can run Roost, like a Toxic, and then you've got two moves up your sleeve rather than just having that Brave Bird as it normally does, so it gets walled real hard by steals.
Yeah, I mean, having Super Fang, having Toxic, Roost, Taunt, stuff like that, not every week it's going to want to run Defog. It's going to want to form more of like, kind of just like a bulky wall roll, opposed to, having to being forcing it to get those rocks with the field. To be fair, the team isn't very rock weak, but obviously it's not a good thing if you're going to be pivoting in and out with things like Mesprit and Jolteon. If you bring, like a flame charged Flareon in the back, it's not something you want up. So it's just something that he's going to have to take into account. It's a great defog, probably one of the best in this, this low tier format, but it's more annoying than it is like an actual huge flaw.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing I saw with this team is he's kind of lacking that big special hitter outside of Jolteon, and Jolteon really wants to form that pivot role. Like, its only setup it gets is work up, so I mean, that was one
thing. Honestly, for special wall breaking, he's gonna rely on running like Life Orb or Specs, Mesprit, and Jolteon is more so going to be that fast pivot that can hit certain things hard. Its coverage isn't deep enough to really be that like great wall breaker. It's really fast and has like dual screens and stuff like that. But I think that's more so going to be thrown onto Mesprit. I think this team does support Mesprit really well to where it doesn't have to be super defensive every week like it would on a typical draft. But it is going to be heavily pressured in doing that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Fracture is actually a mon that I was looking at. I was hoping people would sleep on, but that base 117 attack with access to Dragon Dance seems ridiculous.
Oh yeah, sleeper. Oh yeah. All right, next one.
Yeah, next one we got Matt and his Montreal Melodics, and he's got... This team was hard to place for me. I originally had it a lot higher, and then I started seeing a lot of weaknesses. But then I sort of was like, had this down low, and then I'm like, hang on, Specs Primarina has no switch-ins in regular tier. What does it switch-ins in low tier? And then, it's...
For me, I really like, the structure of this team. I think they cover each other well, defensively and stuff like that. My biggest problem, something I'm really big on with my, power rank and stuff like that, I don't like slow teams. I don't like, bad speed tiers and stuff like that. And his fastest mon is being the Virizion. But other than that, it kind of significantly drops off. You have lots of, slower, like, bulkier pivots like Incineroar and Primarina and Donphan and stuff like that. So the team does really lack in that speed department. If you have anything that outspeed Virizion, which also isn't one that can really come to every matchup, it does kind of struggle a little bit with that.
I think Virizion was a much needed pickup for this team because before it was really heavily relying on something like, well, it didn't have Kecleon at the time, but Kecleon or Xatu to take those special hits, or maybe like an AV Incineroar, because you really don't want Primarina to be taking all those special hits because it is such a strong wall breaker in the tier.
It gave him a ground resist too, which is great. I mean, he has Xatu as an immunity, but despite usually investing a lot, Xatu isn't as bulky as people definitely think it is. I think it works as a pivot opposed to as an actual like bulky wall. So having that ground resistance version is actually pretty nice for his team. I definitely will agree.
I do think Pikachu is quite a value pick at 1 point.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like this thing that should not have been 1 point. Like Light Ball.
the Vulpix was actually more points than the Pikachu, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, and I mean, the Pikachu, it's not the greatest. I think it's 91 speed from memory, but as we've seen,
it's not crazy, but it's definitely a good value pick. I mean, it has great utility too. I played against a Pikachu in draft. Lapis brought it versus me one game, and I honestly on my team I was like, oh wow, I slept on this in prep, and I don't want to let anything get nuzzled. It gives him pretty decent speed control on that.
Yeah.
Which is it's actually super valuable when you have things like Primarina and Incineroar that are like kind of middling speed tiers, but they hit like trucks. I think that's actually going to be super, super nice for his team.
I also do like that Xatu can throw some wishes to those first 3 mons and Garbodor, because outside of that, his team is really lacking reliable recovery. Like, it was only Virizion and Kecleon from memory.
Kecleon doesn't get any, besides like Drain Punch. The only thing I will say otherwise about this team is, in my opinion, it lacks like an initial wall breaking power. Like, he has one of the best wall breakers in the tier. But as good as Primarina is offensively, the defensive typing is actually phenomenal as well, and you don't want to have to run, specs pre-marina every week, or a completely offensive pre-marina every week. You want to utilize that typing and that pretty good natural bulk and stuff like that. Same thing with Incineroar. It can hit decently hard. It's just it's going to run typically more bulky sets and stuff like that, and they are a bit slower. Other than that, nothing on this team really can hit too hard. Virizion honestly hits kind of like a wet noodle unless it's claw minded up or sword stance up, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then Don Fan is another mon that is going to be forced into a more defensive role in more matchups than not. So it's going to force him to prep in a certain way where he has to bring those mons more offensive.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts him in an awkward situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I did just check, by the way. Kecleon apparently gets recover.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I'm completely. For some reason, I didn't even know it did. It's because I'm usually. But, oh dang! Slept on it. My bad.
Yeah, and apparently it gets recycled as well. Like, when did this mon get all these good moves?
If it had better stats, it'd actually be pretty broke. I mean, just having Protean makes it somewhat viable even in standard. So it's definitely a cool mon.
Yeah,
play some hit games with it and stuff like that. Shadow sneaks on the fighting types that want to come in and hit with a stab move or something like that.
Yeah.
And I will say I really do love the hazard game on this. On this
Garbodor's
having Don Fan for spin and having Xatu for magic bounce. I think that's great having that option along with the toxic spikes and the spikes and stuff like that. I think those two are super, super solid, and they're very reliable in getting them away. In stacking teams, it can be super nice with things like pre-marina in the back and stuff like that. Switching in after toxic spikes and rocks, you don't really want to take 2 hits from that thing. It makes it a lot harder to switch into.
Oh, and anything that was taking 2 hits is now just not, because if you're taking even 1 layer of spikes and rocks maybe, then you're not.
Oh yeah, it makes it out completely different, because you're not gonna throw max. You're gonna want to optimize it. If you do too much, you're gonna be put in range after just a little bit of chip from the paths can go a long way with bonds like this.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think we're almost at the next team. Anything you want to say about this team?
If I had anything else in my notes, I think we kind of already touched on this a bit, but I really love it's point mod. I think it was super solid. Oh, never mind.
Yeah,
we're jumping on to Slick's team.
Yeah. So we have Slick here. He's Cleveland S Cavaliers. Looking at this team, it's finally a team with good hazard control and a nice number of rockers. 3 stealth rockers, Seismitoad, very reliable. Pawniard is it's Pawniard. And then Tyrantrum, who 9 times out of 10 wants to run that just Scarf Head Smash or Dragon Dance or something, can actually fill a much more defensive role because of its bulk in the tier. He does have Spin in Kamala and then Defog in Rotom, Tornadus, and something else. I think it's
Chimecho, I think. I think it's Chimecho.
Okay, that's news to me.
Yeah.
The one thing I see with this team is if you take away, what is a threat before it sets up outside Tyrantrum?
Yeah, that's true. See, I'm in the minority. I actually really, really like this team. I like the way it was constructed a lot. I think the Sun offense in itself is just absolutely terrifying. While Tyrantrum is is only traditional wall breaker, having to go against a regular Venusaur, just throwing off Life Orb, Sludge Bombs, or throwing off a Growth and getting +2/+2, and just hitting on both sides ridiculously hard is great. Nothing really wants to switch into a Ninetales Fire Blast in the Sun. Especially if he nasty paws up or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And the Tornadus can hit things pretty hard. Not much flying spam is just pretty solid in the tier, and then having boosted heat waves potentially in the Sun is nice. The thing is though with the Tornadus, I don't think the team really supports it very well. Having that Sun there is a huge hindrance for it, because Hurricane already, 75 base accuracy, but it's more like 50 already, and then you throw that in the Sun, and it's pretty much never hitting, unfortunately. Which is really, really.
Yeah, I have a bit of a bias against Tornadoes because I used it last season and I brought it to 2 games and it missed 3 hurricanes across those 2 games or something. So I'm like, yeah, I'm on.
Just run air slash.
Yeah,
just run air slash. That definitely is a big hindrance because Tornadoes is good, in my opinion, especially in like the tier, like I said, just nothing really wants to switch into those flying types and stuff like that. I think it's pretty nasty having that. And another thing I really like about this team too was picking up a water that didn't really care about being in the sun as much. I mean, potentially catching solar beams from Sleeper Mons definitely wouldn't be fun for Seismitoad. But most of the time you can kind of just click that ground stab opposed to your water stab. It gives them a really reliable rocker. I just love Seismitoad in general. It's such a reliable Pokemon just to eat a hit and do its job really quick before it goes down. And that plus Venu actually synergize pretty well together. I think having that 4 times.
I do love the Seismitoad pickup. I would have liked a nice reliable Wish Passer. I think Chimecho gets Wish from memory.
Kamala does actually.
Kamala
pretty
does.
Pretty bad too.
Kamala.
Yeah.
So Kamala is a mon that everyone says is great, and I just don't see it.
I'll agree. I don't think it's as many field. I think it. I don't think it's there. I don't think it's horrible. I think it can definitely do the job in some matches. It's definitely great with an EV. It gets decent coverage, and then it can be somewhat decent Wish Passer. I don't think anything on the team really misses not having that wish, other than like the Seismitoad, which is like the girder. But yeah, it's not an amazing mon, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do. I think the other thing is I feel like this team is very reliant on closing out games. This team I feel is very reliant on Venu in the sun or a setup by Antrim. And I I 100%. Like it kind of forces them and sun turns are so fleeting. Have to come in with your Ninetales, and then you have to have an opportunity to switch out and go into your Venu. Honestly, often you don't have time to set up that growth, which is actually pretty detrimental, and that power and stuff like that. Unless you're running like Heat Rock or something, but in some matches, I don't know if this was one of his Z's, but in some matches, Ninetales wants to run like a Z move, or it wants to run like lefties or resist barrier, something like that. It doesn't want to be forced into doing that, and I think that makes it a little bit tougher on the team. It is really reliant on that Venusaur, especially with the Tornadoes missing hurricanes in the sun and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, bulk up Tornadoes is a set, but if you're gonna run,
it's very niche. It's niche.
And I see if you're gonna run a bulky sort of bulk up set, then you've got Girder right there, which you can slap an Eviolite on. Get some bulk up drain.
Yeah, and it does it's honestly very niche. And you kind of rely on that like citrus or that item pop, so you can draw off acrobatics and stuff like that. Know their stab that you can really use physically, unless you're in like Z Fly or something like that. But I don't know if you necessarily have the move slots from bulk up Z Fly very often. Yeah. I will say another thing I really like on this team. I think the Volturn core is pretty nice in Tornadoes and Rotom. I think Rotom gives them a pretty nice Scarfer. It gives him a nice dual screens option. I think Chimecho does as well, but I'm not too familiar on that mon, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I've never seen it drafted. I mean, in low tiers, I can definitely see the case for it. I think someone in, like, when P4G did their low tiers drafted it, but yeah. Oh, next up.
We're on to Banded and his Carolina Caterpies, who, yes, we are doing the team that has Meloetta Gligar, even though he drafted Decidueye Lantern, because that trade was happening after about 30 seconds into the draft.
Oh, and we should probably say, too, Slick's team did change. That was kind of like the post-draft thing. I think transactions.
Yeah, he did make one or two. He's actually dropped his Sun Core since, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the new team at all.
Yeah, I was... Yeah. Oh.
It wasn't different on the docs.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, too. But yeah, so anyway, we got Banded and his Caterpies here. Straight off the bat, Meloetta, Gligar, Arcanine, and Galvantula, 4 amazing first picks. The webs to go with Meloetta and Arcanine to be able to sweep is phenomenal. Gligar is like such a fat mon, and I think he supports ice coverage okay. Like, he's got a Hail Core there that eats ice moves for days. Arcanine couldn't care less about your ice moves. And if it's a special ice hit, like Meloetta's very fat, especially, so I think Gligar's nice and supported here. I will say his only rocker is Gligar, and although actually no, Aurorus gets rocks too. That's my bad. That's a layout mistake. God. Um, or is it Sansa? One of the Hail Core gets rocks and Gligar. And although Gligar is probably one of the most reliable rockers in the tier because it just can eat hits for days and then roost it off. Also with immunity, it can't get toxic. It's very much pigeonholed into that role, I feel.
Oh yeah. So like you said, I think Arc plus Mellow is really nasty. I think they pair really well together. Just having Arcanine to break those steel types that Mellow hates going up against is super nice. And then I absolutely love the Hail Core. I think Golden Sandslash is terrifying. As well as Aurora's can be pretty scary. Having that coverage is pretty. The coverage it has, and then the dual stabs it has. I think it's a super solid mon. One thing I will say though is I feel like Gligar, while it is phenomenal, I think it's incredibly pressured on this team to soak up a lot of hits, especially from those fast electrics and stuff like that. And yes, he did support very well with a lot of ice resist and stuff like that. But those ice resists can kind of just be bought by a coverage move and stuff like that. I feel like more fast teams are going to overwhelm him a bit, being that his fastest mon is the Galvantula. He does have the webs, but he kind of relies on them a bit actually Floatzel might be faster, but he does just rely on webs a little bit too much. But other than that, I really like how this team synergizes in the Mellow Arcanine especially, and then Sandslash kind of breaking down the things that they don't want to deal with and stuff like that. I think it's definitely super, super solid.
Oh yeah, that Hail Core is terrifying unless you have a mon with Mark Punch, and then it's just
yeah, that's not scary. He doesn't. He actually, fighting resist, like I said, he has Gramble and he has Gligar, so it's even more pressure on Gligar right there.
Yeah.
Because Meloetta is obviously neutral and stuff like that.
Gramble gets the Intimidate, so intimidating and then being a resist, like it's taking 4.
Oh yeah, having the dual Intimidate also is great. Yeah. One other thing that I just saw in my notes I totally glossed over is this team's Scald switch-ins are like nothing on this team really wants to be burned whatsoever. Even if they can take the hit decently well, stuff like Meloetta, it really doesn't want. Even if it's wearing if it has lefties, it's kind of offsetting those lefties. If it's AV, that lets it get chipped out even more. If it's like a sub variant, stuff like that, it just super lowers its longevity. Obviously, Gligar and Arcanine don't want to take it. Bramble doesn't want to take it, and his Water is more of a physical breaker than anything, and it's pretty frail if I remember correctly. Floatzel, so it's not really switching into him very well. So I think those fat waters are going to be really annoying for this team to switch into.
For sure.
And great honesty, because he has the Galvantula, which is pretty strong. But other than that, those bulky waters can kind of sit and just be very annoying until they eventually kind of get chipped and whittled down.
Like the teams that have Swampert, Seismitoad, Gastrodon, they love their matchup versus this team because he doesn't have.
Oh, it just sits in front. Oh yeah, stuff like Gastro. Then like Evolve Galvantula, and then I don't know if Meloetta gets covered for it actually. But other than those two, it just kind of like sits in front of this whole team.
I think Toucannon
gets just clicks Scald and Earth Power.
Yeah, Toucannon gets Bullet Seed, and with Skill Link, it's
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
shit, I forgot.
So, that blows back any 4 times weaknesses, but it doesn't want to come in and take a Scald.
You can't really run. You can't run Rindo or anything either, so that's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think. Other than that, there's not too many flaws with this. It's kind of getting into the better teams in the league and stuff like that, because there are some pretty nasty teams up top that are kind of overshadowing these ones. But that doesn't really take away from this team in general. I think the team supports Meloetta really well.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, man, it's really good with that mon. Meloetta is definitely a fun one to use.
AV Charge Beam is coming at least half this season, from what I've heard, and that is terrifying.
If it works in the matchup, I guess we'll see.
But just imagine, Webs is up. This thing's in. It's got Assault Vest. It's already got a Charge Beam boost. What comes in?
Not much, because not much is Okoing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you need Scarf Knockoff. But anyway, we're on to Beazle here. My rank 11. You've got him ranked at 17, which I think was a bit harsh. Johnny in the background has
Might be
just
a little
seen
bit.
Johnny in the background has just seen an Ordino team ranked 17th, and he wants to cry.
I don't know. We might have to talk after this. You might not friend it.
Yeah,
See.
I'll let you start off with this team, and then I'll try and find some saving graces in why this team should be ranked top 12.
I think honestly, I think I was a little bit. From what I've heard from Silver and Lapis, they had this team a bit higher. There are some teams that I really like. Things that I really like about this team. I think the defensive synergy is great. I think the speed tiers are very nice. I think Audino is really, really great on this build. Actually, just passing those fat wishes to stuff like Bronzong and Tentacruel, potentially Rhoda Mudsdale, especially. I love me some Mudsdale. Almost as much as Kurt. Not as much, but almost. um, I think the defensive synergy is absolutely great on this team, and that the Defiant core having like the Perugly and the Primate being there to like deter defogging, or the Rock set Bronzong and Mudsdale setup, or the T Spike set Tentacle sets up. I think that's super super valuable because it makes them absolute threats. Not much fun to switch into a +2 Primate or +2 Perugly in this tier. But with that being said, beyond stuff like that, and set up threats in Simisear and Gorbis, this team just, I don't know, on paper it doesn't really threaten much. It just seems so not passive. It just, nothing really scares me on paper. It's nothing I'm like, oh wow, I don't have a switch in for this, or I don't have anything that can really switch into this. It's more so mons that are kind of dependent on sticking out at the end of the long game, winning with like a Scarf Primate or a like a Scarf Perugly or a Life Orb Perugly or something like that. So like it just, that lack of immediate wall breakers really just kind of deters me away from really really liking this team, because while his team is very bulky, if you eliminate the Audino or it doesn't come, all of these mons get chipped very very quickly. So that puts a lot of pressure on the Audino, because all of these mons get chipped super super early, and once they're gone, there's not much left to this team, in all honesty. So that was kind of just my problem with how it was constructed and stuff like that.
Yeah, I will give you that. That Ordino is very key to this team. I do like his Volt Turn core in Perugly, Primate, and Rotom. I think that's something that's quite nice about this team. I will say that this team is very much centered around playing the long game. You've got something there like Wobbuffet that if there is a big threat to this team, it can come and just sort of trap it and remove it, and sort of do the 1-for-1 trade. So I don't see a lot that breaks this team. I mean, you've got Bronzong and Tentacruel for the ice types that hit Rotom and Mudsdale. You've got Tentacruel and Rotom for the waters. You've got a lot of resist to fairies and the dragons. Fire types.
Oh yeah, the defensive synergy is insane. It's just a matter of beating that Audino and that Wobbuffet, which I feel like a good player can prep around. While Wobbuffet's obnoxious, I played this team week 1, and prepping for Wobbuffet was just obnoxious because I saw so many things that were so good, and then I was like, oh wait, this is just Wobbuffet, and then I lose this Pokemon, and that's bad. So like having mons like that, definitely are a hindrance. But the move Taunt also exists, which definitely,
that is
Audino and Wobbuffet don't appreciate that. The move Substitute does exist as well. So it is very obnoxious, but I think in a certain way, depending on your matchup and stuff like that, it's not as set in stone as bring the move Taunt and Substitute and win this game.
That's
I feel like it's makes the team a lot easier to deal with if you know how to prep around that. Like that.
That's one thing that
take advantage of it.
That's one thing that I think I pushed this team up a bit for me, is just looking at the teams we've looked at. This one forces significantly more prep, I feel. Because you have to have an answer to Ordino. You have to have that Wallop answer, which might force Shed Shell on something, which means it can't hit as hard, and therefore can't break some of its bulkier walls. You have to try and find a way to beat a Gorbis that is Shell Smashed, because there's not many things.
Oh, Gorbis is terrifying. I will say that.
That little pink noodle is the scariest thing on his team.
Especially being that the speed, some of these teams are slow. This isn't very fast. Against the right team, honestly enough to just outspeed, just kill everything with Hydro Pump.
Oh yeah,
I was definitely super scared of it. It's more of a matter of not letting it because somewhat I don't know if it's frail on the physical side or the special side. In Hunt Hill, one of them is frail on that side, and the other's frail on the third.
I think
So
it's
it is just a
physically
matter
frail.
if he can position it well, stuff like that, and the Seer, to set them up and just punch through teams. I definitely think that's pretty terrifying if you can do that in the late game when there's a lot of hazards up and stuff like that. Just chipping down the teams that are struggling. So I definitely think he has a lot of potential. And from what I've seen him, how he's played so far since I've seen him play, I think it definitely fits his style. I think well with it. It's just there's a few flaws that I didn't personally.
Yeah, I'd agree there. I think having his removal is very reliable in Tentacruel and Rotom, but I do think just that one extra, even if it was a low tier mon that didn't really want to do it, would have made his team a little bit more versatile, I think, rather than forcing one of them to run it.
Oh, for sure.
But anyway, we're on to Dylan and his Adelaide Bolt Strikers. And at first glance, this team is absolutely terrifying. We have Heracross, which a gut set runs through teams, a scarf set can run through teams, like it can run sub Swords Dance. Then you've got Mega Steelix, which in regular tiers is hard as hell to break. But then in low tiers, it's 125 attack becomes a thing, and well, that's just terrifying. You got Vaporeon, which just throws wishes to Steelix, and a Steelix that can heal itself is the scariest thing I've heard all day. You've got Drampa and Delphox in a backup Wish Passer in case Vaporeon has a bad matchup. Drampa hits about 3 times as hard as the rest of the tier on the special side. Huntail for Shell Smash setup, and then you've got and you've also got a Hippo there that can activate that can set the sand for Steelix's Sand Force, which I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely super solid. Heracross is absolutely. I don't want to play it. Nothing switches, Flame War Cross whatsoever. And I think it plus Steelix they pair really nice. I think Steelix checks a lot of the things that can come in and prevent Heracross pretty well, actually. And then having that Vaporeon 2 pass like fat wishes to both of them potentially, I think that's super super valuable, like you were saying. And Drampa is going to be super super solid. It has a great natural bulk actually. It has access to Calm Mind. It has access to Roost. A really wide move pool too. And then Berserk is a really cool ability. Gives them a grass immunity, which it doesn't necessarily need, but it helps with Vaporeon, I suppose. My only 2 main complaints with this team is it's very slow.
Oh, for sure.
Delphox being the fastest thing on the team is definitely a big hindrance, in my opinion. Everything it kind of sits around that middling speed tier, or very very slow. I think that in turn forces Heracross to run Scarf sets pretty much every week, just so he has decent speed control. And Heracross doesn't want to run Scarf every week. It doesn't want to lock into a move sometimes. I think Scarf Heracross is a lot easier to play around in some matchups, just because you can pivot around Mega Horns and close combats pretty well, honestly. So I think that definitely is, a pretty big hindrance to that team. And then the only other thing that really, really bugs me about this team is having one Defogger and Rotom Fan. I like Rotom Fan. I think it's a good Pokemon. I have it in the league as a tier 5. I think it can be a decent Defogger if you really need an extra one in a matchup. But having it be weak to rocks itself, having sand potentially chipping it down, and just being weak to so many typings with that electric flying and having an absolutely useless ability as well. I think it kind of just it sucks having to bring that almost every week if you don't want to get stacked, especially with no grounded poison. So this team absolutely hates T-Spikes. While Heracross can potentially take advantage of that with Guts, it's still going to chip it down faster than a burn if you get 2 layers up. And then Vaporeon hates it, Drampa, Delphox, stuff like that. Spirit Tomb especially. I think that'll be definitely really annoying and prep for this team. But otherwise, I think the team, synergistically is really, really nice. I really, like I said, I love Heracross with Steelix. I think that's a really, really cool. Plus Vaporeon. I think those first 3 are, just really perfect centered around each other.
Oh yeah, and for me, this team, if you took Spiritomb and Grottle, because I think they add the least to this team, and swapped it out for a grounded poison and then a nice form of removal, because as much as I like Groddle and I think it's a great mon, I think he has enough bulk when you look at like even Hippo is like quite bulky. You've got the Steelix, you've got the Vaporeon, you've got Trample with its natural bulk, you've got Delphox there. I feel like Groddle was sort of just I'm there to be a grass type.
Yeah, I mean it does give him a ground resistance. Nice. I suppose Heracross does as well, but obviously I don't want it to take those.
Yeah.
So I think it does offer some pretty good utility. Groddle can actually be bad with an Eviolite.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think getting extra removal or like a grounded poison or something like that, just to deter those types of strats used against him would definitely help, or just maybe some more speed. I think if you would have picked up some early draft speed, it would have really helped his team out. Just flushing out those speed tiers.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Like if he ended up getting like Noivern or something like that over Grandpa.
Oh yeah, that would have been
really, really, really nice. I think that's a great fit. Too bad I have it. Yeah.
I was gonna be like, wait, who has Noivern again? Oh, that's right, you do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, he has 3 very reliable rockers in Steelix, Hippo, and I think the last one's Groddle. I feel like it should be because nothing else looks like it gets rocks.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to. I didn't know it get rocks.
Well,
I know it's not ground. I know it's not ground type yet, but I honestly did not know it got rocks. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
The thing is though, he does have a lot of rocks, but in a team where you don't have good hazard removal, part of the things you can do is force other teams to defog for you. You can pressure them with your own hazards, forcing them to defog to where you don't need to, and just getting out more hazards. But only having rocks is also a big hindrance too. Not having T-spikes or spikes. But yeah,
for sure. Okay, we're on to the last team for this video. We got Hugo, and I think looking at this team, the first thing I notice is it's almost like Hugo knew I was making this little layout on the right-hand side of the screen because he has filled every box. And, well, half his team carries Stealth Rocks. He has Celebi, Druddigon, Lycanroc, Forretress, and Pupitar, all that can run Stealth Rocks.
It's 4 out of his 5 first picks.
Yeah. And then he's got 2 T-Spikers in Marini and Forretress. He's got Forretress, which can spike. He's got Swirlix for Sticky Web. And then he's got Forretress for Rapid Spin as well, which can keep up your hazards while removing. And so there was a couple teams that have no removal or only one removal mon. If Hugo plays them and gets Rocks, T-Spikes, and Spike stacks them, they just lose. Because
again, I think it was Joe's team. Like this match very much at all. Fortress just kind of comes and throws hazards up, and the game is pretty rough.
One of the other things I do like about this team is I actually like Regice a fair bit. I was running some calcs because I'm like, Regice is bulky, but just how bulky? And turns out Regice can switch into 2 Specs eruptions from Typhlosion.
Oh yeah, that thing Spadef is actually super.
It's ridiculous. Marini is a great pick, I think, just for the bulk, the ability to be a grounded poison, and just do annoying things. The psychic weakness is covered fairly nicely by Celebi. Actually not the most. It's covered by Celebi, and that's about it, because Murkrow is the most frail thing and not switching into any hits.
Yeah, and Fortress, I guess, but H2 fires and thing. I hate Fortress. I think it fits on.
Yeah, I think it fits here. Lycanroc Ducks.
It fits amazingly on this team. This is probably one of the only teams I'd ever consider drafting it on.
Yeah, I think Lycanroc Dusk and a setup Celebi or Moltres are going to be pressured so much into breaking for this. Well, breaking and then cleaning for this team. Because Druddigon hits like a truck. And then
his building's going to be very he's going to bring Celebi, Moltres, Druddigon, Lycanroc, Fortress pretty much every week. Then he's going to bring one of his Eviolite Mons or Regice. It's going to be pretty much those 6 pretty much every week, which isn't necessarily horrible. But it does, make prep a little bit easier. But another thing I really like about this team, other than the hazard game being absolutely just amazing, is having that. I really like Celebi plus Moltres. I think they cover each other defensively. I think having that, that great bug resist that punishes. He has a lot of things on his team that would potentially punish U-turns, being the Moltres with Flame Body and stuff like that, or just 4 times resisting in general. And the Druddigon with like Rocky Helmet, if he runs that 1 week, it takes off a fat chunk of that thing. And if it's a bug type that's U-turning, it's taking 25% on rocks when it comes back in, because he's keeping his hazards up with this team. Because how many hazard daggers he has. So, U-turning on this team definitely isn't a great idea all the time, just because, Celebi's 4 times weak to, bug. Well, you're taking that huge amount of chip every time you do, and you're going to be gone by, turn 15, and then the Celebi is going to be, have free reign. And then having the Lycan Rock, too, for that, priority SL Rock, just to pick things off, especially those, U-turners that are weak to Rock, which is, a good amount of them. I think that's, this team supports Celebi really, really well, having just the mons that it does.
I do agree. One thing I will say is the last 2 picks for me, Pupitar and Mienfoo, I feel like he could have spent those points on one mon and maybe just added a little bit more value and just that scarier mon, because Mienfoo is it's kind of alright. I mean, but it's base 82 attack, so it's not hitting crazy hard. And then Pupitar,
I just don't see the point of Pupitar on this team. It just doesn't offer much to it. He doesn't need any rock. I guess it gives him. It gives him. It does give him a ground type. It does give him a ground type, but that kind of leads into my next really big kind of thing I don't like about this team. I think this team's amazing. I think I had it ranked a little bit higher than you even. But one thing I really don't like is how he fills pretty much all the roles on the team you need, but in the way that he budgeted, he kind of filled some of those roles with pretty meh Pokemon. Yeah. I understand Marini is pretty bulky with an Eviolite, but it's still a Marini. Swirlix as well, it can be pretty bulky with an Eviolite, but it's still Swirlix. So having your bulky water and your fairy be, pretty much 1-point mons is, super, super unfortunate. And then, especially the Pupitar, having your ground type be a Pupitar, it definitely isn't the move. I would rather have Diglett, in all honesty. I think it just offers more utility and stuff like that. With those mons being all pretty much, baby Pokemon, stuff like that, this team absolutely hates the move knockoff.
Oh,
absolutely.
What's his knockoff switch in? It's Druddigon, Moltres, and Forretress. Well, Forretress wants to
nothing wants to. I don't, especially when you have 1, 2, 4, 5 Pokemon that can have their Eviolite knocked off. Yeah. Yikes! Yeah.
Well, anyway, that brings us back to the start. Thanks for joining me. I think that we weren't too mean, unlike the video that went up, well, probably a couple of days ago by the time they're seeing this. But yeah, so next time we will be covering the top 8 teams. Before anyone says anything, no, my team is not in the top 8 because I put it there. It's because these guys did that for me. Except Owen, who put me at 10th.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay, well, I think we should wrap it up here because we're already at 48 minutes. Which, if anyone knows anything about Australian internet, this is going to take me 3 years to upload. So, yeah. Okay, well, I think that's all. Thanks for watching, guys, and we will catch you later.